Okay, so wanted to get a lot off my chest, I guess. Clear the air a little bit for myself. First of all, I'm not a news commentary. I'm a citizen in training, and I'm leaning into a proud do-gooder. I mentioned that in another video, but I'll probably explore that a little bit more. Everything's connected. So I'm going to pull together a few things that kind of been formative for me and for this project. In my own personal life, right, is being pulled into it. I had some jobs that I was applying for this summer, and one of the questions was conflict management. I'm going to do something with my hands because it makes it easier. And I made some notes, y'all. There's enough here that even though I have an Echolalia conversion, don't tell me what to say. Apparently it also applies to scripting of myself. So anyway, conflict management was part of the job skills, right? So I looked it up, did an online class, and went down that path a little ways. And what really struck me, well, the conflict management, like, holy cow, we don't know how to manage conflict. We don't. Whatever contributing factors, as a society, we have lost that skill. I don't like this. So then servant leadership, different leadership styles, because that kept popping up when you're doing searches for that, right? They're related. And I found that I got an audiobook, short audiobook. Servant leadership is what makes sense to me. That's the leadership that I look for. And on the political scene, the qualities that are being displayed by the administration that's in power right now is diametrically opposed to the qualities of servant leadership. Yeah, I listened to a few interviews. One was a retired military leader, about integrity and ethics. And it reinforced that. About the same time as I was listening to that book about servant leadership. And then the political climate right now. More recently, I listened to a knowledgeable person in an interview discussion say that Project 2025 is just the most current iteration of a project that was started in the 70s. And every 4 years, basically the Conservative Party creates their manifesto for the next election cycle. And Russell Vogt just put Project 2025 on steroids. So the writing's been on the wall, and the writing is spelled PROJECT 2025. So, especially with my fundamental Christian background, I dip into that a little bit. Which, speaking of the fundamental Christian background and growing up in the Bible Belt, Alabama, Oklahoma, spent some time on the West Coast, so the common good aspect of my personality probably developed there, right? West Coast Democrat, whatever. So nurturing or tough love, there's a polarity there on a cultural level. I've seen it. And so when I found Nations Apart, Colin Woodard's body of works about the regional differences, the cultural regional differences. Oh, Lord, that's not going to work. It's going to keep bumping. Keep beeping. We're not going to do that. There. Told you. Kitchen table. Civics with Quilly. So anyway, all of this was coming together. Nations Apart as an effort. He has Nationhood Lab, which is a collaborative, methodical effort to recreating the Declaration to serve us today, our modern culture. And he discusses, I'm doing a close reading, a lot of this. I don't just read, I read and I dip into the sources that are discussed. So that led me to Danielle Allen's Our Declaration. I have Audible books subscription, so I get 1 credit a month I already paid for. So going down the path with Our Declaration, I find American Academy of the Arts and Sciences. That's my playlist that I'm building in YouTube. You're going to see these names as a playlist. American Academy of Arts and Sciences was doing a project, Our Common Purpose, in anticipation of the 250th anniversary, right, of the Declaration of Independence. So that information and what resonated led into what became, I think, is the last letter I wrote of the campaign for the Quilly letter writing campaign. So I want to read that. I wrote it March 29th, 2025. And I wrote it as Everyday Jane on behalf of everyday Americans. To President Trump and his staff and advisors. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, most of the American electorate does not speak legalese, nor even the dialect of political activists. Ours is the dialect of the common man, the common vernacular. We are the working people that build, maintain, and grow the U.S. economy. I honestly believe this letter will fall on deaf ears. But as a citizen reader of the Constitution, I am obligated to voice our shared concerns. I put this in boldface. With this letter, we remind you of our inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We hereby declare you are not ordained to dictate or judge the personal and unique paths we take to pursue our individual happiness. End of boldface. I remember when the admonition, bring down the temperature of American politics, was the talking point of the day. Those words were fleeting. Led by President Donald Trump, it feels like a veritable bait and switch has happened to the American electorate. The promises of lower cost of living and American isolationism were empty promises, a mirage to procure power. This illusion was quickly replaced by taxation without representation, tariffs, and fantasies of global expansionism. Upon inauguration, political power, checking my sound output, sorry guys, family upstairs. So let's start over. Upon inauguration, political power was immediately subrogated to a man not born on American soil, but who invested hundreds of millions of dollars to buy himself a seat of influence in the Trump administration. The beginning of much of that wealth came by nursing at the teat of the American taxpayer. Elon Musk has undue influence over Trump and the Republican Party. As a major government contractor, he should have no influence whatsoever in any business of the federal government. The list of unserious people having decision-making positions in this administration is long. RFK Jr. betrays George Washington's legacy of using inoculation to provide his soldiers protection from disease. Pete Hegseth uses his mother and his wife to deflect attention from his own past and possibly present public behaviors. The whole Signal chat group denies and makes excuses for a flagrant breach of national security. Pam Bondi and her team are perverting justice every day in the courts and betraying their oaths to the Constitution. The jobless rates are being blown up one agency at a time by Musk and his entourage. There is an overt attack by this administration on our economy and on our democratic constitution on many fronts. The ripple effect on whole communities decimated by the firing of public servants and contractors is on the horizon. Homeowners unable to pay mortgages, small service provider businesses going under, farmers that rely on U.S. aid purchases going bankrupt, construction projects getting mothballed because of tariffs or funding cuts, and tradespeople being laid off, to name but a few, are on track to implode the GDP. America has strayed from the path to making a more perfect union in the past. But when this administration came to the fork in the road that led to either authoritarianism or a thriving constitutional democracy, it took the wrong turn. You are hereby advised that the electorate will reinvent American democracy. And this is where I bold-faced what is kind of an enumerated declaration. We will recover from the malicious harm being done by the Trump administration. We will achieve equality of voice and representation. We will empower voters. We will ensure the responsiveness of government institutions. We will expand civic bridging capacity. We will build civic infrastructure. And we will establish a culture of commitment to American constitutional democracy and to one another. Respectfully, Everyday Americans, March 29, 2025. A little bit of that is not as relevant, but the vast majority of that is still really, really relevant. The declaration there of what we will do, I have coined a phrase for what is ahead of us. I call it the great uneffing. You fill in the missing letters there, right? There's a lot I've learned. Sandy Levinson has, for 40 years, been progressively getting deeper and deeper into peeling back layers of where the Constitution needs to be improved. So it kind of came to a natural just culmination of my letter writing campaign. My representatives here in the state of Washington are Democrat and progressive for the most part, on the forefront of defending democracy as we know it. So then I needed to dig in and find out more historically, and more about our power as citizens. I'm going to do a show and tell because this is another electronic book I read, but Molly McHugh, as a historian and professor, called out, let's see, I'm just going to show the title because I read it, From Dictatorship to Democracy by Gene Sharp. It's a handbook, it's a field book for what seriously felt like the trajectory we are on when I started reading this upon her recommendation. On Blue Sky, I created the hashtag FD2D to stand for From Dictatorship to Democracy. If you're on the Blue Sky, you can search that and you'll see where I tried to tie in current events. And I kind of reached a saturation point for that too, but for the current events, that's back to, I'm not a news commenter. It's a blender of bad and worse news. And escalating the level of stress helps no one, really. But what we do need is, which is brought out by Gene Sharp, is we need strategic planning. So that became my focus, kind of a laser focus and shifting. And then as that comes closer, I see the next thing. Sandy Levinson is down he's across the horizon at this point in time that I'm referring to this book. But who are the strategic planners of the resistance? So where do I throw in my energies? Where is it going to be effective? Because I have limited resources, so I want more bang for the buck. So I was looking, and I'm looking outside of Congress, right? Writing letters to your Congress when, as I've learned since then, Richard Primus was interviewed, and he has the original question of the Constitution, I believe. Check the playlist, it's there. He proposes and makes a good argument that Congress has learned helplessness. There's a whole discussion about that, but that learned helplessness means we the people and people coming up from the citizen class are going to be what shapes reinventing American democracy. And next, so I'm out of that rabbit hole a little bit, and another month, and I dropped down the rabbit hole with Corey Brettschneider, and his book is The Presidents and the People. Presidents who have threatened democracy in the past, and there's 5 of them in his book. He details them. It's a gut punch. Yeah, there was some pretty nasty stuff going on. But what I realized is that the civil rights era was not the product of a few years or even a decade or even 2 decades. It was lifetimes of pushing the envelope, pushing the needle, which means that this struggle is for the rest of my life. And unless we enact structural changes, which is where Sandy Levinson comes back into, and the horizon has come forward. The structural changes have got to happen because in his most recent discussion 10 days ago, I think, check the playlist, right? There's my receipts. The receipts are in the playlist. He says it's not the illegality that is the problem right now. It's the legality, what's being done legally, because there is no formal definition, formal codifying of what is considered norms of behavior that are no longer even the rear view mirror. They're gone. Don't even tap the brakes, right? So we are deep into a constitutional crisis. And once again, a search for Sandy Levinson, because it's just layers, right? The Miami Law School has a whole seminar that's in my playlist. I think it's 14 videos, one a week, since like July, something like that. That's going to be the who's who of who are the strategic planners. That's our wealth of information. That's who we're going to draw on to help shape the 21st century democracy. We're a big, beautiful nation. It's a kaleidoscope. Go back to the Nationhood Lab and the need for a national narrative. There's that's controversial. I've seen some people I really respect their work in general just blast that concept that we can have one national narrative. Well, what if our national narrative is a celebration of how multifaceted we are, of how our diverse cultural regions, historically diverse cultural regions, accept and respect that? If the tough love place that is the safe place for a lot of a significant amount of our electorate, a significant amount of the population is comfortable in an authoritarian environment. That's what they know. That's their pursuit of happiness. So if we find a place where that need for safety is recognized, then maybe this proud do-gooder is not so far off the mark. Alrighty, that's it. Stop recording.